Welcome back to This Day in Irish History. I'm your host, Raymond Welsh. Before we dive into today's story, if you'd like to explore other significant events that happened on this day in Irish history, visit thisdayirishhistory.com. The link is in the episode description. Now, let's journey back to March 27th, 1933, when Connolly House in Dublin became the flashpoint for one of the most violent expressions of anti-communist sentiment in the history of the Irish Free State. Connolly House, located on Great Strand Street, served as the Dublin headquarters of the Revolutionary Workers' Groups, a Marxist organisation founded in the early 1930s that would later evolve into the Communist Party of Ireland. Named in honour of James Connolly, the socialist leader and Easter Rising martyr, the building was more than a political office. It was a symbol, a centre for radical working-class politics, a beacon of defiance in an Ireland grappling with poverty, unemployment, and ideological uncertainty in the years after independence and civil war. The 1930s were a tense and polarised time in Irish society. The newly formed Fianna Fáil government, led by Eamon de Valera, had just come to power in 1932, ending 10 years of Cumann na Gaedhil rule. But beneath the surface of political change simmered an intense ideological battle. Fascism was on the rise across Europe. Economic hardship was biting deep, and here at home, the Catholic Church exerted immense moral and social influence, often casting left-wing and especially communist ideals as godless and dangerous. In this climate, the revolutionary workers' groups faced an uphill battle. Their public meetings were routinely harassed. Their publications were censored. But the opening of Connolly House as a dedicated headquarters marked a bold step, a challenge to the dominant forces of conservatism, clerical power, and nationalism. That challenge would come to a head on March 27th, 1933. On that Monday evening, a mob of approximately 6,000 people, incited by a toxic mixture of anti-communist propaganda, fiery sermons from pulpits, and right-wing agitation, descended upon Connolly House. What started as a protest quickly turned into a full-scale riot. Stones were thrown, windows smashed, the building was stormed. Leftist activists inside, caught off guard and vastly outnumbered, were beaten and injured. Furniture was smashed, literature destroyed, the building ransacked. The Gardaí, Ireland's police force, responded but were criticised for arriving late and doing little to prevent the destruction. Some accounts even suggest a level of sympathy among certain Garda officers for the attackers. In the days that followed, few arrests were made, and no serious charges were brought against the rioters. For many on the left, it was a clear signal. Their safety could not be guaranteed, and the state had little interest in protecting them. The Connolly House Riot laid bare the fault lines within Irish society. It was not just about communism versus Catholicism. It was about class, fear, and the fragile nature of Irish democracy. The revolutionary workers' groups, already small and embattled, were further marginalised after the riot. Their activities went deeper underground, and their influence remained limited. But the symbolism of what had happened, the violent rejection of left-wing politics in a country named after a socialist martyr, resonated for decades. Interestingly, the event also marked the beginning of a pattern that would continue throughout 20th century Ireland. The suppression of radical leftist movements, often through a mix of public hysteria, clerical condemnation, and state indifference. While Ireland would later evolve politically, the shadow of Connolly House remained, a reminder of how dissent can be silenced not just by laws but by mobs, and how ideological fear can override democratic ideals. James Connolly once wrote, "The worker is the slave of capitalist society. The female worker is the slave of that slave." The attack on the building bearing his name underscored just how controversial and threatening his ideas remained, almost 2 decades after his execution. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Ireland's rich past. Please like and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Raymond Welsh. Slán go foill.